Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm taking a look at a new game called Legacy, Steel and Sorcery. This game was released on Steam in early access on February 12th, 2025. Its regular price is $32.50 Canadian, or your regional equivalent, and it's developed and published by Notorious Studios, and this is their very first title. This is a fantasy extraction shooter. Extraction shooters are games like Escape from Tarkov and Hunt Showdown, I think. I will admit, not a genre I'm totally familiar with, but when I saw that this was a fantasy-focused one, I was a little bit more interested. The store page also describes it as an action combat PvPvE extraction RPG set in the classic fantasy world of Mithridates, rich with expansive outdoor zones. Play solo or with friends to gather loot, slaying creatures, or even other players. So an extraction shooter is basically you go from your hub world, whether it's a menu or like a physical world, into these smaller sort of levels, and you usually have a time limit in this game. Typically you've got a time limit of 30 minutes, but sometimes when I loaded in, it would say I only had 25 or 20 minutes. And you basically need to gather all the loot and kill as many things as you can to get experience, and then go to the extraction zone, which in this game is always shown on you've got a little compass indicator on your HUD at the top of the screen. It's always shown as a little green marker, so right from the start you always know where you need to go in order to extract. If you successfully reach the extraction zone, you get out with all the materials you've acquired, whether that's crafting materials, weapons, armor. But if you die before reaching the extraction zone, then you lose everything you acquired, so it's a very, very high-risk, high-reward game genre, and it's quite a stressful one. I've played this for just over an hour, and when I said I'm not that familiar with extraction shooters, I'm really not. I've never played one myself. There's a couple of... I watch a fair bit of YouTube, and one of my favorite channels is called Hat Films, and I watch pretty much every single one of their videos. But as soon as they play Escape from Tarkov or Hunt Showdown, I skip those videos because I think I watched like a couple of them when they first came out. I just could not care less about the extraction shooter genre. I think possibly apart from like the really nitty-gritty like big strategy games where you're like controlling a bunch of like armies and stuff, extraction shooter is probably my most hated genre of games. But like I said, I saw that this one was fantasy. I love fantasy, you know, I don't care about sci-fi or actual shooters too much. But fantasy kind of appealed to me, so I thought, why not give it a go? It's their first title. I thought I'd like to, you know, do something to help, sort of, by making a video on it, even though I'm really not familiar with the genre. And yeah, it's still absolutely not for me. But I think this game's pretty cool. Like, if Hat Films put up a video on this game instead of Tarkov, I would watch this game. I think this would be a fun one to watch. It's not fun for me to play, though. But having said that, I think it's pretty solid. It's in early access. I recorded the footage you're seeing literally 3 days after it launched in early access. Apparently it had some bugs, some issues on the very first day. But when I played, totally solid. It was a pretty good experience, apart from the genre being one that I don't like. When you start the game, you get to make a character. You've got 4 character slots right now, and there are 4 different classes you can choose. There's a warrior, there's a hunter, a priest, and a rogue. And apparently they will be adding a wizard and a paladin later on in early access, both of which sounded very cool, and I was a little bit sad I didn't get to try them, because yeah, normally I'd go for a wizard, I think. But I decided to make a rogue, and the rogue just sounded quite cool. Came with poison dagger ability. I like doing poison builds. Had an ability where they could go invisible. Sounded pretty cool, especially if I was, you know, presumably gonna have to run away from players, which I did end up doing. There's a really nice little tutorial in the game. For some reason the lighting was kind of strange in the tutorial. Like in the shadows it was just pitch black, like I couldn't see what was going on at all. And it teaches you the systems of the game. One thing in the tutorial is I did find that the actual like tutorial pop-ups were very easy to miss, especially if something popped up when I was in combat. I think in my first combat encounter, I got like 3 of the tutorial pop-ups, and I didn't read any of them because I was fighting for my life against a surprisingly tough skeleton. But yeah, it was a really nice tutorial, very quick, teaches you the systems of the game. If you're familiar with an extraction shooter, it's not 100% necessary, but it's nice that it teaches you the controls and things like that. And after the tutorial, you're free to hop into the first big level, this huge, it's surprisingly big forest area. I was blown away how big it was, because my impression of extraction shooters was fairly small scale levels, like not tiny, but they don't have too much in them. This one seemed to have like caves and dungeons and big castles, fortresses. It was surprisingly big and lots of variety. So in my first game, I gathered some wood, some apples. I killed a couple of zombie-looking things, and then I saw this like big like orc-looking warrior coming towards me. So I killed him fairly quickly. And then when he went down, when I dealt the final blow, I saw that he had a name above his head, and I realized that, amazingly, I just managed to kill a real player, which I was not expecting to do, because, I don't know, I do not think I'm good at this game at all. But yeah, in like my very first game, I managed to kill a real player, so I was quite proud of that. Sorry for ruining your day, probably. And so after I killed the player, I managed to gather a few ingredients, or a few of his items, because he dropped quite a few things. And I basically just tried to make a beeline for the exit, and unfortunately I ran like right into this big fortress that I mentioned before that was like full of skeletons, and I had no healing, no bandages to recover the... If you look at the health bar, you can see there's like a gray bit on the right of it. You can get rid of that by using bandages. And yeah, I just sprinted through this fortress. If you sheathe your weapons, you can run faster, which was very helpful, but unfortunately I was so low on health that I fell off a cliff, and I thought that would be it. And then I saw another rogue running around below me, and they scrambled up just to come and execute me, which was pretty funny. I should mention that, I mentioned it very briefly before, but this does have a solo or co-op mode. So the mode I was playing was obviously just the solo mode, where I was just matched up against other people playing by themselves. So I wasn't going to run into groups of like 3 players who would just gank me or anything like that. So all the PvP felt quite fair and balanced, which was nice. If you have friends that play this, you can get into the group mode and run around and do those big gank fights if you want, but they won't be gank fights because they'll also have friends, presumably. But yes, I do think it's great that they already have a solo mode and a multiplayer or a co-op mode. Even though it's called the solo mode, you're still playing with other people, but they're also like other individuals instead of other groups. Back in town, you are able to, put all the items you gained in storage if you got them. One of the special feature of the rogue class is I have like 2 protected slots, and so I can put special items in these protected slots, and if I die, I'll lose everything except for those protected items, which is quite nice. I was able to get a couple of valuable things out of there. You might have noticed the inventory system is Diablo based, where things take up space, take up certain slots, and you have to rotate them to make them all fit in. And also back in the city, you've got a whole bunch of different vendors who can sell you materials, weapons, armor. You can sell your valuables to them, you can sell like your old weapons to them, and you're also able to craft different things like weapons, armor, different potions. There's also a lodge system, which I didn't get very far in at all, but I believe it's kind of a way of earning experience when you're offline. But yeah, I did not get into that very much. There's also a really cool quest system. There's kind of like a tutorial quests, or quest chain, I guess, which does teach you the basics when you're out of the tutorial, and it kind of guides you to what you're supposed to be doing if you're really unfamiliar with these kinds of games. So I think like one of the earliest quests I got, I think it was like the 3rd quest or something, was to go into the first main area and successfully extract. And I think it took me like 3 attempts to finally get out, but eventually I did, which felt pretty good. And then it was just other tutorial things like craft a potion, reach level 2 and upgrade a skill, which I'd already done by the time I unlocked that quest. Unlock a trait, because there's traits and skills. I think the graphics are really cool. It definitely looks a little bit like World of Warcraft, a little bit like Kingdoms of Amalur, kind of. I played a rogue when I played Kingdoms of Amalur, and even like the combat felt kind of like Kingdoms of Amalur, because I played a rogue in both of those games. But yeah, I think the graphics and kind of the world layout where you're finding little farms with orcs roaming around them definitely reminded me of World of Warcraft. I think it's really nice graphically, ran really well for me. I think there's only a couple of times it dipped below 60, and that was not for long enough for it to really be noticeable for me. There's a lot of really good graphic settings. There's the option to disable motion blur, thank God. Loads of different quality settings that you can change. It auto set the quality for me, and I just left it, except for I turned down post-processing just in case. And I think I also changed the global illumination mode from lumen to screen space, because it said screen space was for performance, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good to me. Loads of different FPS limits, which is great, so I was able to pop everything up to 180, and it didn't hit 180 in the game, but it was pretty decent. It was usually hovering around 100 for me, which is fine. So I think I'm going to leave my video there, a little bit shorter, but this is really a genre that I assumed I know I did not like, and I assumed that a fantasy one or fantasy game in this genre wouldn't sway me to like it. And I think by the end of my hour playing it, I was feeling like I was enjoying it a little bit more, but definitely not enough to play anymore. It's really just a genre that's not for me at all. But I think this is very solid, especially for a first title. I think it's very impressive. Like I said, I didn't have any bugs or performance issues or server issues or anything. I did get absolutely destroyed in my final PvP encounter. I think this was in my last run, and I was like, yeah, let's just see how if that first guy I killed was a fluke, and it probably was a fluke, because yeah, I got kind of destroyed. Maybe it was close, I don't know, I feel like I did some good damage, but did not go great, and then I was just like, yeah, I think I'm done here. But if you like extraction shooters, and especially if you like fantasy games, you might like this one. It didn't do it for me, but I kind of assumed it wouldn't, because it's just not a genre for me at all. There you go, that was a look at Legacy, Steel, and Sorcery. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!